Color temperature refers to the warmness or coolness of the color. The temperature of the color will affect what colors will result from mixing. In color theory, red is considered a warm color. However, in color mixing, red can be either warmer or cooler. Although red is still a warm color, its pigmentation can cause it to lean warm or cool. Warmer reds will produce different colors compared to cooler reds when mixed with other primaries. This applies to each of the primary colors. Blue and yellow also have warmer and cooler versions based on pigmentation. Using multiple warm and cool versions of primaries will lead to a greater variety of colors that can be mixed. Therefore, it is recommended to have both warm and cool versions of primary colors in your paint collection. Let's take a closer look at some of the warm and cool versions of primary colors. We'll start by looking at blue, which, according to color theory, remember, is a cool color. Colors, however, that lean to the warmer side include ultramarine and cobalt blue. Primary blues that lean to the cooler side include Prussian blue and cerulean blue. Next, we have primary red. An example of a warm primary red is cadmium red light. An example of a couple of cool primary reds include alizarin crimson and magenta. And then an example of a primary yellow that leans to the warmer side is Indian yellow hue, while a primary yellow that leans to the cooler side is cadmium yellow light. Now let's have a look at our color wheel again. If you'll remember, we used ultramarine as our primary blue. We used cadmium yellow light as our primary yellow and cadmium red light as our primary red. This produced a variety of secondary and tertiary colors resulting from these primary colors. Now, we could substitute these primary colors with different pigments of color. For example, we could substitute ultramarine with Prussian blue. We could substitute cadmium red light with alizarin crimson. In this example, I kept cadmium yellow light in its original spot, but as you can see, the mixtures of colors produced are clearly different. So we know from color theory that blue and red make a violet, but what violet is actually made is heavily dependent on the pigment of the primaries that are used. Color placement on the color wheel can also help us to determine aesthetically successful combinations of colors. These are most commonly referred to as color schemes. By limiting our palette, we can create harmony in works by using specific color schemes or by taking advantage of color relationships. Let's take a look at a few of these now. We'll start with monochromatic. Monochromatic literally means one color, and it is a color scheme made up of one color and the tints and shades of that color. A complementary color scheme consists of two colors that are directly across from each other on the color wheel. Complementary schemes provide high contrast. An example of a complementary scheme is blue and orange, or red and green, or violet and yellow. Analogous colors are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, and an analogous color scheme is made up of 3 to 5 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. An example would be blue-violet, blue, and blue-green. While analogous color schemes do not provide high contrast like a complementary scheme, they do provide quite a bit of harmony and unity as a color scheme. A color triad is made up of 3 colors that are equidistant from each other on the color wheel. This forms a triangle, thus the name color triad. An example of this are the primary colors, blue, yellow, and red. Another example, of course, are the secondary colors, purple, green, and orange. A color tetrad is made up of 4 colors that are equidistant from each other on the color wheel. One example of a color tetrad is blue and orange, and yellow-green and red-violet. A split complementary color scheme is made up of 3 colors. One color and that color's complements closest analogous colors. So in this example, we have blue, its complement is orange, and the 2 colors closest to orange are red-orange and yellow-orange. So our split complementary scheme is made up of blue, yellow-orange, and red-orange. Neutral colors are colors not found on the color wheel. They can be used to alter the value and/or intensity of the color. Neutral colors include white, gray, black, and brown. Blacks, browns, and grays can be mixed using a combination of primaries. Theoretically, it is a mixture of complements that produce these neutrals. An example, red and green, blue and orange, and yellow and purple. Here again, the pigment of the paint used will affect the resulting neutral color. Here's a look at a couple of mixtures of neutrals. In the first example, we've mixed cadmium yellow light, ultramarine, and cadmium red light to produce the neutral in the center. We know that theoretically it is the complements that produce the neutral, therefore orange and blue, violet and yellow, and so on. Essentially, this means that we are just mixing the primaries together to produce this neutral. But it is important to understand that if our neutral color appears too green, then we know we can add a bit of red to it to balance it out. Or perhaps if our neutral color appears too blue, then we know that we need to add a bit more orange to it to balance it out. In the second example, we've again mixed primary colors, or versions of primary colors, to produce the neutral color in the center. In this case, we used Indian yellow hue, alizarin crimson, and Prussian blue. Notice how the neutrals are slightly different. So what did we discuss in this module? Well, we took a closer look at the paint tube and discussed the characteristics of the paint that affect mixing properties. We also looked at color theory basics, including primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. We also discussed color mixing basics and warm and cool primaries and how they affect color mixing, color schemes, as well as mixing neutrals.